sponsors for tonight, just want to recognize again the Loudoun Wildlife Conservancy, Waterford Foundation, and the Loudoun County Preservation and Conservation Coalition. Thank you guys very much for helping to get the word out about the event tonight. I am Julie Bolthouse, Director of Land Use with Piedmont Environmental Council, and I'm going to be your presenter tonight. So, first thing I want to do is introduce our organization. PEC is a nonprofit 501c3 formed in 1972. Our mission is to protect and restore the lands and waters of the Virginia Piedmont while building stronger and more sustainable communities. Our region expands from Clark County and Loudoun County down to Albemarle County. We have paid staff who work directly in the community and follow local and state issues that matter to our region, like this one we're talking about tonight. We are supported by our membership and donors and are only able to bring meetings like this to you through their gracious contributions to our organization. So if you're not a member of PEC already, I urge you to consider becoming one today and support this continuing effort to get the word out to you guys and to follow these crucial matters. So I want to, sorry, I can't see the slide, so I have to look at my notes because I have no idea what's on that screen. So tonight's discussion, we're going to be talking about the proposed transmission line. I know that's what everyone is most concerned about. We're also going to be talking about the explosive growth of the data center industry, though, because it's very tied to that transmission line. And we're going to talk about trends and projections and what we can do individually and collectively to address this issue. So out of 72 proposals that were brought forward to PJM during their last planning window, and this planning window was established specifically to address the load demand in Loudoun County, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But out of those 72 proposals, these are the ones that were selected by the PJM TAC committee, and that is the Transmission Expansion Advisory Committee. These are paths. I want to be really clear. These are paths, not routes. So when you look at our map, so this is a map that PEC created using the information that PJM has put out there for the public, and that is very limited information. Their maps are very poor. They do not give us the geospatial data and make it easy on us. So we have to create them from scratch, so there may be some inaccuracies in there, which if you open the map, you'll see there's a splash page that explains that. But they are paths, which means that PJM is saying we need power from this point, and this is the route we think it would go around, and it needs to go to this other point. Now, there will be a routing process, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in just a second. This is not the routing process. This is just establishing the need. This is basically PJM saying this is the need for the route. And we put different colors on this map to show you which ones are new builds. The red are new build lines. The purple is rec and rebuild lines, and the brown is expansions of existing right-of-way. So they may be putting a second 500 kV or a larger line in that space, needing additional land on either side of the one side or the other side. So, sorry, yeah, we've got a Zoom meeting going at the same time to try to share with the other room. So. Marco, my thing is frozen too. I can't change the slides. There we go. All right. So these are the different transmission lines that you might see, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. The line that's going through Western Loudoun is a 500 kV line. The three boxes, the one in the lower, this side. The smaller line. The smaller line is the one you see along Route 7. That's a 230 kV. It's not the size we're talking about for this proposal. We're talking about 500 kV, which is what's in all those other boxes there. And this is just another image showing you the different types of transmission lines that are out there. You can see they get very tall, and they vary in design. This is only one example of what a 500 kV line could look like. There is different examples out there as well. So this is the timeline that PJM has put forward. This is actually a slide from their presentation. It shows where we are in this current process. So back in February, they initiated a planning window to address the load demands of Data Center Alley. In that announcement, they clearly said that this is to address data center energy needs within Northern Virginia. They also explained that this was unprecedented, the amount of energy that they would need to provide over a very short window of time. And where we are in the process, so let me step back for a second. The next step of that process was in October, where they put out the 72 proposals, and we saw all those proposals. And then in October 31st, we found out which ones were selected. And that's when we were starting to try to get the word out to folks about what's on the table here. And right now we are in the December period, mid-December, and this is where the PJM TAC subcommittee that's been doing all of this planning and discussion of these different routes is now going to make a recommendation to the PJM Board of Managers, which they make the final decision about those routes. And then once they make their decision at the end of December, we're at the end of PJM's timeline. But then the next timeline begins for the SCC. And so that starts with the routing, the utility that is going to be routing this transmission line. And you'll notice that's not Dominion for this line. This is also a bit unprecedented for our area. This is actually NextEra. So what they did was when they had these RFPs that were put out for different proposals, there were 10 different entities that came in, some of which were not the incumbent entities within the area. And so NextEra made a proposal for this line through our area, and they won the selection from PJM. So we're going to be dealing with a company out of Florida that has no experience in Virginia, has not done any other transmission lines in Virginia, and honestly, they don't have the same reputational concerns that Dominion would have had in our areas. That is concerning, and it is a very important reason for you to stay engaged on this issue, even if this line is selected by PJM and moves forward. That is not the end, that is the beginning of a crucial routing process. And we're going to need everybody to be following that very closely. Now what? I just said it was a 500 kV line. It's also going to need about 115 to 165 foot right-of-way. That's what's described in their narrative. That's subject to change, though, as they start to move forward, and if there's engineering constraints and things like that. And it will likely be about 100 to 200 foot in height. And the area, of course, is this area through western Loudoun. And as many of you saw when you were looking at the map, you probably noticed that the beginning of the expansion goes through Sweet Run State Park, the newly established park that Duncan just cut the ribbon on in September. The Middleburg Viticultural Area, it goes over Short Mountain. It goes through the Waterford Historic District. It goes over designated scenic roadways, a number of them. It goes over Route 7. It goes over the W&OD trail. It goes through conservation easements. It goes through wetlands. It goes over streams. And it goes through a corner of Philip Boland Park and over the journey through hallowed ground. So it is definitely a very highly impactful proposal. The economy of this area is primarily based on agriculture and tourism. So this line is going to have a huge impact on the actual economy of this region, which raises a number of questions about what this line is needed for in terms of economic development, which we'll talk about in a second. With that, I want to go ahead and give our partners a chance to express their concerns or their interest in this line that they've been following. So, Michael, do you want to grab a microphone here and the slide I put up here, actually I'll tell you. Hello.
Great. So I'm Michael Myers. I'm the Executive Director of Loudoun Wildlife Conservancy, and we are also a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is a membership-based, volunteer-driven organization. And we protect, preserve, and restore wildlife habitat in Loudoun County through engaging, inspiring, and motivating people. And we do that through 4 main program areas. So we have advocacy, education, citizen science, and habitat conservation programs. And so as part of all of that, we work with our partner organizations to host events, alert the public, educate the public, and raise the knowledge about wildlife and why it's important and why we should protect healthy habitats here in Loudoun County. And so this project in particular raises a lot of concerns. All transmission line projects raise a lot of concerns. In particular, what we want is to protect wildlife habitat and to preserve it. And so with lines like this, we want them to be built as near or as close to the already built infrastructure as possible. And what they've described in the first segment of this is that they, as Julie has mentioned, they will be extending the right-of-way to add, actually it's a third 500 kilovolt line that goes up over the Appalachian Mountains and Short Hill Mountains and through Sweet Run State Park. And this photo here is from one of our bird walks that we lead at the now Sweet Run State Park that we lead every month throughout the year as one of our citizen science programs. And it's also within our butterfly count circle, where annually we go out throughout the county, centered in Waterford, a 15-mile radius, to count butterflies, and we count thousands of butterflies. We also have our Christmas bird count, which doesn't include this circle, but there is a count circle at Sweet Run State Park. And so even though they are just extending the right-of-way at Sweet Run State Park, where that right-of-way goes through, there have been wood turtles that have been documented on one of our citizen science walks, because it's not just birds we find frogs, we find salamanders, we find turtles, and there's an abundance of wildlife throughout Loudoun County, but especially in rural Loudoun County. And so we have a lot of concerns about who this would impact, where it would impact. As Julie mentioned, going up over Short Hill Mountain, even though they're just extending the right-of-way, they're cutting down a large quantity of trees on both sides of that mountain, and then cutting across farmlands, cutting across hedgerows, cutting across streams and wetlands, and our rivers, and that can have a devastating impact, and for a lot of reasons, not the least of which during construction, where as you construct and tear things down, you're turning up those soils and you're inviting invasive species to come in. You're fragmenting that habitat, which leads to increased deer population, because deer love fragmented habitat. And so having a new company like Nextera coming into Loudoun County without necessarily the knowledge about the native plants needed to be replanted and suppressing invasive species and all the challenges we have with all of those, there's a huge risk factor there, and a need for ongoing education and knowledge where we can educate these companies about their practices both during construction and long-term management. At Sweet Run State Park, there is actually a little bit of a silver lining success story that took a lot of staying on top of, so where the current transmission lines go, one of the power companies that works there, our volunteers hounded them for years on their management practices underneath those power lines, and they were responsive and sensitive to our concerns, but it took years and years of developing relationships with the maintenance crew, with the staff, with their contractors, with their subcontractors, and constantly staying on top when somebody's out in the field saying, hey, we noticed that you started bush hogging there and you're not supposed to be bush hogging this time of year, and knowing who to call. So those are some of the risks and some of the worries and some of the concerns that we have about these projects, especially with new companies coming in that don't know our landscape, why people care, what they care about, and why it's important. Because these paths go through our members' backyards, their farms, their neighbors' properties. It would have a devastating impact crossing conservation easements, and other areas that have natural resources that we must protect and do whatever we can to protect. So that's why we're here. That's why we care and we're involved. And we're a resource and a partner not only for PEC and the Waterford Foundation and other nonprofits, active member of the Loudoun County Preservation and Conservation Coalition, but also a resource for all of you. And so as a membership organization, like PEC, we would love you to become a member. Out in the hallway there, you have a sign-up sheet where you can sign up for our email list or pick up one of our Habitat Heralds, which is a quarterly print publication that tells you more about our organization and what we do and all of our programs beyond advocacy. So thank you all so much for coming here. There's a lot of people who care about this, and we care deeply about this, and we'll work with all of you to do what we can. So back to you, Julie.
Thank you so much, Michael. Go ahead and hand that mic over to Sue Manch with the Waterford Foundation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. But it's really heartening to see this many people come out for this really important issue. You know, the Waterford Foundation was founded in 1943 with the purpose of preserving not just the Waterford Village and the historic homes there, but also preserving the 1,420 acres that make up the National Historic Landmark. You know, we are a jewel of Loudoun County. We keep telling the Board of Supervisors that. Every time I go into the Board of Supervisors meetings, I make sure they understand that Waterford and Western Loudoun are the jewels of Loudoun County. Because where do people go when they're tired of looking at data centers? Where do people go when they want to walk among the birds, when they want to see nature, when they want to experience the native plants? They come to Western Loudoun. They don't come to see 200-foot tall data center towers that are going to be ruining the view shed, that are going to make us look like Sterling, and that are going to Fairfax Loudoun. I think what we've really got to think about is how important is it to all of us that we have this kind of view shed, that people still have a place where they can come and be in a pristine environment to look at beautiful views, to experience nature, and to really be in a place that reminds them of what Loudoun used to be, the agricultural community, the historic villages, you know, the communities that have lived here since the 1700s. When I saw the map, you know, it was shocking. We fought so hard to preserve the Phillips Farm land. 144 acres that were going to have 40 homes built on them. The foundation pulled together $4 million to buy that farm and make sure it went under conservation easement and still is beautiful open space today and will never be anything different unless eminent domain takes it away from us. So we're looking at a National Historic Landmark. We just had the National Historic Landmark designation reaffirmed this year by the Department of the Interior. And the person who wrote the report, Catherine Smith, called Waterford simply the best example of an inhabited historic colonial village in the United States. So we're talking about something that can't be replicated. If you stand in Waterford, you're looking at what you saw in the 1800s. When we bring the 2,000 fourth graders from Loudoun County in every year to learn about segregated education in a one-room schoolhouse, one of the first things they say is, wow, this is what they saw. This is what it looked like there. When we just brought 300 middle schoolers from Simpson Middle School in Leesburg out for a day-long program on Reconstruction through the eyes of the people who lived in Waterford, they were so impressed by the open spaces. They were so excited by it. When the 14,000 people who come to the Waterford Fair every year come and look around them and walk the trails and experience the beautiful view shed, they come because they can experience nature and they can be a part of it. You know, we will fight this fight with you. Yes, we're directly affected. It's going to go right through our property and our beautiful eased and conserved land. But, you know, we're so excited that we have great partners and that there are so many obviously people here in Western Loudoun who are really interested and care about this. And I imagine in all of Loudoun, because those people in Eastern Loudoun want to come out here so they can find a place to take a walk. But I thank you, and please, we are also a membership-based organization, and we're always welcoming members. We have a commitment to preservation and education, and we try to do as many programs as we can to bring people out here to learn about this area and to experience it and to enjoy it.
Thank you. All right, so who is this entity that has proposed this transmission line through Western Loudoun? Well, it's the regional transmission operator, PJM, and what they do is they operate a competitive wholesale electricity market and manage the high voltage electricity grid to ensure reliability for the entire area. They're not, though, this is where it gets really complicated, they're not a federal agency. They actually have been given authority by FERC, but they are not FERC. They really don't have a very robust public engagement process because they're not required to. And so the ways that we have to communicate with them is it's not very organized. So what we've done is we've put together this great handout. Thank you, Tia, who put this together. It has information about how you can reach out to FERC. It also has information about reaching out to your elected officials as well. And I see Russell Perry right in the front row here. I don't know if there's any other elected officials here, but
Gary Higgins, who couldn't be here but wants to be here.
okay, and we've got aides for Gary Higgins.
And Supervisor Caleb Kirshner.
Oh, wonderful. We really appreciate, yeah.
I'm also with Supervisor Sames from Sterling District Office.
Do I see one more?
Yeah, Supervisor Turner from Ashburn District Office.
Wonderful. So our elected officials are listening, they're here, they want to hear what you have to say. So again, grab one of these handouts and see what we're asking you to tell them. I mean, basically, it's exactly what you would expect after listening to this presentation, but we're going to keep on going along here. Their goal as PJM is to act as a neutral, independent party. And what they're trying to do is manage the grid for the 65 million people. And I will say, they are obviously the ones causing this problem, but they do have a very challenging issue, which is they don't know where the power is going to be generated, because we are kind of going through a little bit more of a distributed process of getting our energy, and we have it coming from renewable sources, we have new energy coming from different places. We also don't know where it's going to go, though, and that is the bigger problem here, which is the data center energy demand, which we're going to go into a little bit more here. So, Dominion is a member area of PJM. All of the co-ops like Rappahannock Electric and Novak and all that is also kind of in that Dominion territory. And they get the transmission lines connect up to their distribution network. And you can see there's a number of other utilities in the PJM territory as well. Now, the planning process that they put forward, they were trying to address those green dots up there. If you see those green dots, they were trying to get 7,500 megawatts, that's 7.5 gigawatts, of power over to load growth areas, primarily in Loudoun County. You can see the largest dot is Data Center Alley there. And that analysis that was done for that planning window, which is what these lines are coming out of, was done in 2022. And that's really important to note, because if you've been following the newspapers and you've been paying attention to what's going on with rezonings and planned development, there's a whole lot of data center development being approved all throughout our state, including in Loudoun County. So what we're seeing right now does not address all of our energy needs from data centers. It's only the tip of the iceberg, and that's why we are so concerned. So according to PJM, the route through Western Loudoun was actually ranked as a medium-high constructability risk, and that was due to anticipated regulatory, lengthy regulatory process, potential public opposition, construction difficulty, environmental constraints, and property acquisition. So they thought that there would be significant cost and schedule issues with this project. And that's honestly why I was so shocked to see it selected in the end. I honestly did not think that this would have been one of the ones that they would have selected. So you can look at their ranking criteria, which they shared on October 3rd. There's 6 different criteria there, similar to what I just mentioned, but it's the cost estimates, it's the cost containment risks, it's the schedule risks, it's the constructability risks, it's all those things. And you can see it ranked fairly poorly altogether. But the issue is that the first 2 routes that you're looking at are very similar to that 3rd route, but they all end at Dobbs. They don't come straight down to Data Center Alley. And then the 4th one on that list, they actually are going to move forward. You can see the note that I put there. What they state in their reliability report is that the 765 solution, which is that Joshua Falls to Eat, which is that last solution there on the list, could be pursued pending how load and generation materializes. So basically, if we continue to need additional energy from data centers, we'll also need to move that one forward too. So they actually didn't take it off. It's still moving forward, just possibly in a different planning window. So why did they select this route then, if it was such a challenging route? Well, their model analysis identified that there was a bottleneck through Dobbs and Goose Creek corridor and the need for a solution from the west into directly Dominion's data center vicinity. As such, the NextEra proposal was selected because it yielded higher capacity emergency transfer limit through a third 500 kV supply line into the load center. So it is directly to serve the data center load of Data Center Alley. And it comes down to the desire to serve that load with an additional level of redundancy. So there's something big going on here. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. And never has your participation been more important, because what we're facing is really an unprecedented world. And we don't have all the answers. I want to be really clear with that, because it isn't like we can look to another country and see what they've done with massive data center development and the energy loads that it requires, because we have the largest load here in Loudoun County. This is the largest load in the world. So as you can see, it's all clustered in that area, but we are starting to see massive proposals outside of that Data Center Alley area. We're going to go into a couple in just a second, but you can see the growth rate here for Loudoun County. Not only are we the largest data center hub in the world, we're also the fastest growing, because the small line is actually last year compared to this year. So you can see we're also the fastest growing in the world. Now, oh, that came out weird. But anyways, those are supposed to be a bunch of app kind of icons. But anyways, the reason we're building all these data centers is because we're in this new age. It's like the electrification of the 21st century, except it's like the digitalization. Each time you use your phone, I mean, the way that they're able to stay so small is that all that processing and data storage is actually happening at a data center. So like everything that we do, I don't know about you guys, but even when I go to the doctor's office now, I gotta fill out an app, I gotta do, so everything is data heavy. Our consumer habits are tracked constantly by different companies. Some of this is optional, some of it is not. It's not like any of us are, I don't think, asking to be tracked as consumers. So there's data being used, not just by us in deciding to use it, like streaming Netflix, but it's also being used by companies to do a variety of different things like advertising and things like that. And what is a data center? So what's happening in this data center and what is it? It is a facility that is full of it stores and it processes data, and it's full of servers. Those servers are stacked up on racks. That's what the black boxes are there. And those racks are in rows that are in data halls. And there's massive cooling systems associated with them. So the electricity that's used by them is being used by the actual servers, but it's also being used by the cooling systems. And then there's backup generators. And the backup generators you can see lined up behind the building there. That's in case of outage, and they are run by diesel fuel. So we have over 4,000 diesel generators now in Loudoun County, ready to back up these data centers. Those things are the size of train cars. And they usually have fuel tanks, not usually, sometimes they have fuel tanks on site as well. You can see the fuel tanks on the other side of this Amazon building, and they usually have pretty high security fencing around them, things like that. So just for context, the amount of electricity that a data center uses is huge. So 1 megawatt serves about 250 homes at peak capacity. And a single data center building, by comparison, uses 30 to 90 megawatts. So what that means is that a data center is using that electricity 24/7, and that although they are getting more efficient in their energy, the servers are getting more efficient in their energy usage, what is happening is that we're actually seeing more power usage because we're using so much more data. It's become, because it's become so convenient and there's so much, it's cost effective to use offsite data storage, our consumption has increased dramatically. So a 60 megawatt data center building uses as much power as 15,000 households. As we continue to build campuses with dozens of data center buildings, the power needs to come from somewhere. And so what we're seeing is that the data center load growth is driving the transmission line. And many of our proposals directly need a 230 kV transmission line out to the data center. The data center facilities are also getting much larger. The buildings themselves are getting larger, but also the campuses are getting larger. It's not infrequent to see 6 to 10 building campuses. One large campus can use 600 to 1,000 megawatts or more. This is a proposal in Prince William County, one of the largest campus proposals in the world, just south of us. And it is called Digital Gateway, and it will use an estimated 3 gigawatts of power, which is the equivalent of 750,000 homes, way more than the number of homes in both Loudoun and Prince William County. It has 37 buildings, 15 substations, and it has been recommended for denial by the Planning Commission and is going before the supervisors on December 12th. But if you've been reading the newspapers, you'll know that many of the supervisors have already said how they feel about it, and we'll see what happens. But it is definitely not a guarantee that it will be denied. All right. But that's not the only place that there's data center development going on. So Loudoun County, as you can see, we've got 12 million square feet approved that's unbuilt. This is unbuilt data center space. We have about 30 million that's already built. So this is 12 million that's approved and not built, and we have about 11 million in applications. In Prince William, we've got 10 million approved and another 42 million in applications. And then you can see the rural counties are not to be outdone. They're moving forward with their large proposals too. And this does not include big proposals because we don't know the square footage yet in Henrico and Hanover and Louisa County. So just these proposals, not including the ones that I just mentioned that I don't have numbers for, or the by right development that's allowed in Prince William or Loudoun County. This could equate, just estimating it out based on industry standards, to somewhere between 16 and 48 gigawatts of power. Now, just so you know, the current load for our grid is about 20 gigawatts of power. And we're talking about adding 16 to 48 gigawatts of power from all of these proposals if they were to move forward. Now, here's the thing. I hear a lot, oh, well, you know, they're getting more energy efficient. The data centers are getting more energy efficient. They're really not. This is Well, they are, but it doesn't matter because of how much they're using, as I mentioned before. This is an article that came out of the University of Pennsylvania from a professor in electric, I forget what his degree is, but anyways, he's very smart. He said, we take it for granted, but all the tasks our machines perform are transactions between memory and processors, and each of these transactions requires energy. As these tasks become more elaborate and data intensive, two things begin to scale up exponentially: the need for more memory storage and the need for more energy. If we continue at this rate by 2030, it's projected to rise between 8 to 21%, further exacerbating the current energy crisis. Currently, our data center energy usage globally is estimated to be around 2 to 3%. He's saying it will rise to 8 to 21%. That is incredible if that is accurate. And so this is what we're seeing in our own territory. This is showing the purple line is our data center energy usage. And one of the things that's really important to note is that that blue line there is our, is it blue line? No, it's industrial. Our residential line, our red line up there. You'll see that it was flatlining. We were actually, our energy usage for residential was basically stable, even though we had a growing residential population. Our industrial energy usage is declining. Our commercial is stable, again, because of energy efficiency gains as we're building. And so the driving factor for our energy usage is data centers. And again, I hear very often, oh, well, what about EVs? EVs, and this is projecting that there is wide-scale adoption of EVs. That's that little dark blue on top of the data centers. It's nothing compared to the projected increase in data centers. And this projection was done in 2021, so it's actually old. And I would venture to guess that that green area would be much larger if you were to reforecast this in 2023 based on what's going on. So what is happening in Virginia is absolutely unprecedented. And just to demonstrate that a little bit more, this just shows the PJM forecast for different regions. So this shows your mid-Atlantic territory, and you can see we've got like a negative 3% increase in energy happening there. We've got like a negative 1% over in the Western Territory. And then here is the Dominion Territory. 5% annual load growth. That leads to an additional 23 gigawatts projected by 2038. And based on the land stuff I was talking about, what's going to be produced on the land, I would actually say that they're probably going to increase this again next year when they do the next forecast. That's still, why is it not going forward? There it goes. That's still a doubling of the peak load within 14 years. And that's enough electrical capacity to serve 6 million households. Now, just for context, 6 million households, or I'm sorry, we do not have that many households in Virginia. So, what is Dominion's plan for going forward? Well, their plan is new gas plants and advanced nuclear. And it does include, it still has on there our solar and our wind and new battery storage as well. But it has continued use of coal, delayed retirement of those facilities, additional natural gas. It also has a heavy reliance on purchasing out-of-state power, which requires billions for new transmission lines like the one we have going through Western Loudoun. And it costs a lot. So these are the estimates that were put up for the 5 options that were put forward by Dominion in their integrated resource plan. And you can see they're all over $100 billion. And all that cost is then put onto the ratepayer. We're the ones who have to pay for all this additional infrastructure, which amounts to a massive subsidy for the industry. So this is a notification that was put into the newspapers. I'm sure all of you guys read the classifieds diligently, right? You caught this, right? This is the cost of alternative B, which is preferred option from Dominion. And what they are saying is that they're projecting that the monthly bill of a Virginia residential customer using 1,000 kilowatts per month will be $243, an increase of 127 over the 116 that it currently would be under the current rate. So that is 100% increase in our bill by 2035 to pay for the transmission lines that will be going through our communities. So this is an article that was put out by Ivy Main in the Virginia Mercury, and she wrote about how we are subsidizing, this is in February, the data center industry, and she poses that question and she puts out some information. But I would say, based on this new information that has come out, that number that was put out in the notices that went out in October of this year, I would say the answer is clearly yes. Yes, we are subsidizing the data center industry. One of the richest industries in the world, we're subsidizing them. We cannot continue to go down this path. So, what are we doing? So, PEC has been leading this charge for the last couple years. We've been working with our partner organizations. We have a coalition of 27 other organizations, some of which have been fighting these battles for a very long time. We have Karen Sheehan over here in the second row there. She's with the Coalition to Protect Prince William County, and they've been fighting data centers and these transmission lines since the Haymarket case back in 2014. And so we have some very strong partners that we're working with, both at the national and at the state and local levels. And we're going out there and we're raising the word. This is a picture from a protest at the data center conference in Tyson's Corner, where we brought a number of our organizations out there to make it really clear to those attending the conference that we see you and we want this addressed. We're not going to let you keep continuing to do this. And the other picture is from when we went to Richmond, where we were trying to get a bill passed that was carried by Chap Peterson to get a study of this issue, to get for Virginia to get a handle on the water, air, grid impacts, the ratepayer impacts, the climate impacts, the land impacts that come from this industry. And unfortunately, we could not get it, we could not move it forward. But this year, we've got another proposal for legislative changes, and we got it put into the VCN Common Agenda, which is VCN is a kind of an umbrella group for over 200 different nonprofits in the state of Virginia. So this is a guiding document that others are referencing. And what we are asking for in those legislative priorities are a study of the cumulative impacts so that we can better understand the impact on air, water, land, and our climate goals. Because these data centers use a lot of water as well. We didn't even talk about that, but that's another issue as well. Also, we're asking for a grid impact statement to be submitted before localities approve additional data centers, because right now we're approving data centers without having any idea of how much electricity they require. These localities are simply just going, yep, we approve it, without actually addressing where's that power going to come from and what community is going to have to handle the transmission lines. Also create a framework for additional state oversight and review. And then finally, our other agenda, which is focused more on energy, we're also asking for a shift of the cost of this infrastructure, so the transmission lines and the power generation, onto the industry. And partially that addresses the issue of the ratepayer impact, so we're not paying for it, but hopefully it would also address the issue of the proliferation of these lines. Because if the industry actually has to deal with the cost of expanding a line out 3 miles to their new data center location, or if they have to deal with the cost of providing more power onto our grid and building these regional transmission lines like the ones proposed in Western Loudoun, they might be less inclined to move forward with those ideas. They might be more inclined to pursue energy efficiency and reduce their energy usage. I want to give our lead here in Loudoun, Jem Bingle, a moment to talk specifically about Loudoun County, and then we'll close up.
Thank you. So, there is a role that Loudoun can play in helping to improve the situation. But first I want to take a step back and let you know how we got here. So we have infrastructure here in Loudoun that was very conducive to the development of data centers. And back in 2008 timeframe, when data centers started to be to come into Loudoun County, the county board of supervisors was in a jam, really. We had a need for tax revenue and no clear way to pay for all the people that were coming into the county. So data centers were a really attractive solution to that. They didn't require a lot of infrastructure. They provided a lot of tax revenue. And so that issue, and not understanding the ramifications that we are facing today, the Board of Supervisors were like, okay, let's make this really easy. And so they have two kinds of approval processes for data centers. One is administrative, which means it doesn't have to go through the Board of Supervisors for approval, and the other is legislative, where the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission, and the board have to review the applications and then give their approval or denial. When there's a legislative application, the board has more control. But like I said early on, people thought, well, the more the better. And so we have a lot of areas in the county where by right development, and by right means what I just said. It doesn't have to go through the Board of Supervisors. The land regulations allow for data centers. So that has created a problem, frankly, because the Board of Supervisors now has been hearing from residents all over eastern Loudoun County that they're really tired of data centers. They're starting to impact their quality of life with noise, with ugly buildings right next to them, and other things. So the need for control has become apparent to the Board of Supervisors, I believe. And then the latest is now the transmission lines, with the transmission lines proposed to come straight down Route 7, as well as in the southern part of the county and now out west. So what is the board able to do? Right now, the board is looking at adopting a zoning ordinance amendment. This zoning ordinance amendment is to go along with the comprehensive plan changes that the board adopted back in 2019. So those changes that the board has been considering include things that they can do to help limit data center development and to manage the standards by which they are developed. So the board is going to be having a public hearing on December 13th for the final sort of review of the ordinance, and potentially, probably, they will adopt it either that night or soon thereafter, but before the end of the year, which is what we hope, because those by right aspects of data center development need to be managed. And the Board of Supervisors has said, okay, there are certain zoning districts where we are not going to allow them by right. We are going to have them go through a legislative process. That's a good thing. We want that. In addition to that, they have set up setbacks from residential, noise control, and lighting measures in order to have less of an impact on the residents who live nearby. Going forward, the board also wants to make additional changes, but they have to be careful frankly, because I don't know how many of you are aware, but 34% in fiscal year 24 of our revenue is coming from data centers. And potentially it'll be up to 50% in the very near future. So the board has to tread carefully to not upset our economy, but at the same time get a handle on this problem. So next year, the board has already indicated that they are going to start a comprehensive plan amendment to specifically address data centers, where and how they are developed. And then along with that, there will be a zoning ordinance amendment to add additional standards. This may sound boring to you, but believe me, it's important that you come out and let the board know how much you support their getting a handle on this issue in Loudoun County. Make sure I haven't forgotten anything.
Meetings on December 13th.
Right, so the meeting's on December 15th in Leesburg at Board of Supervisors meeting room, and come out and speak in support of these changes. And if you can't come out, you can write to the Board of Supervisors, and that contact information is in the handout that we gave you. So I think that's it. Back to you.
Thank you. So what can you do? The first thing, of course, for those of you who are in this room, you're probably most concerned about that transmission line coming through Western Loudoun. Submit comments to PJM ASAP, because they will be voting on this on December 11th. The Board of Managers will make their final vote on December 11th. So raise your concerns, get on the record, having raised those concerns, and their contact information is on the handout. If you haven't picked one up, we will be sending a follow-up email with that information as well. Second, as Jim just said, comment at the Board of Supervisors December 13th zoning ordinance public hearing. Let them know that this is an issue that you want them to get a handle on, that you are concerned about us continuing to go down this route. And then third, stay informed. Sign up for our lists, ours, Loudoun Wildlife Conservancies. Follow what's going on, because the NextEra routing process is going to start if this is approved, and we're going to need you at those meetings to make sure that they are addressing every single one of our concerns during this routing process, because during that routing process, that's where you're going to talk about things like undergrounding. That's where you're going to talk about different ways that it should be going, different ways it should be designed, and things like that. So even if it does wind up getting approved by the Board of Managers, there's still a huge role for you guys to play. Also, stay involved in the county zoning and planning process, because as Jem said, this is only the beginning. This public hearing on December 13th is only the tip of the iceberg of what we really need to do as a county. And then fourth, reach out to elected officials and support data center reform legislation that's going to be coming up. I'm not going to go through all of them, but we do know of at least a dozen bills that are being that have been pre-filed and are moving forward with different legislators throughout the Commonwealth. And also share this information with family, friends, and neighbors. Make sure that everyone is aware of why this transmission line is moving forward and what it's meant to serve, and how it connects with the data center issue. And then finally, as we already mentioned before, continue to support our organizations. We can't put on programs like this without your help. So thank you very much, and we're going to open it up to questions and answers. Hopefully answers.
And I'm going to bring the mic around here, so just raise your hand and we'll...
I see Chris has a question.
Chris, we'll let Chris have a thought here.
I just hope you guys will give a shout out to Julie for pulling together all the things. Julie's been working, 70-hour weeks for about 6 months, pulling this together, this whole campaign at the state level and also at the local level. And she's part of the community and very committed. The other thing I wanted to say is that this is not just a Virginia issue. We've got friends here from West Virginia, we've got friends here from Maryland. And just something that came out in the news today was that the state utility commissioners in PGM are not happy with this proposal. They have looked at the bottom line, that thing about your bill, and they are realizing the political implications that they face for decisions made by Loudoun County. So imagine if you're a Maryland utility commissioner and you're going to see a huge rate increase. It's one thing in Virginia, but imagine if you're in another state and you're going to have a rate increase to facilitate economic development in Loudoun County. And so I think that friends, family, and neighbors extends across state lines, and we need help from maybe wiser and more thoughtful folks in other states to help our state take responsibility for what it's creating. So all those great ideas, add that one to it.